Welcome to Mental Health and Faith, a Closer Look. I am Carolyn Cooper. This podcast and YouTube show addresses issues related to mental health and wellness, recovery, our spiritual journey, and what the Bible teaches about living in this complicated world. I also welcome pastors, writers, mental health professionals, and others to come on my show to share how God has navigated them through some challenges in life and how He has given them the power to overcome. Thank you for being here today. Now sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, this is Carolyn, and welcome to another amazing episode. I know it's amazing already because of my guest. My guest today is Lea Turner, and I actually met Lea, and she was referred to me as someone who could help me with a book launch that I'm doing. And she will tell us about her business and her partner later on, but I want to give her a chance, first of all, to introduce herself. So, Lea, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Carolyn, for having me. I'm so excited to be able to talk with you today. Well, like you said, I'm Lea Turner. I am the co-founder of Writer to Writer, which is how we met, is the business that I do for coaching. I coach writing clients and we do book launches and all that kind of stuff. And that came about just because I had launched my own book and I met my partner, my business partner, Kim, in a cohort. So that's one part. But I'm also an author of the book Freedom to Feel. I am a grief coach, Pilates instructor, a mom of five, husband of 25 years. We live in Mississippi, and I'm a reluctant grief educator. I really didn't plan to be this person, but God has placed me in this season of life to help others in their grief because of all the things that I have walked through. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. And it is interesting that God pulls us into ministries sometimes out of our circumstances.
Hmm.
And I know that you have quite a story. So I would love for you to share part of your story with the people listening so they can have an understanding of the depth of grief that you have been through and the events that you have faced in life. Then we can contrast that with, wow, God,
Yes,
as you worked through that. But why don't
right.
you share your story?
Okay, well, I had up until 2019, I hadn't experienced much of loss at all. Life had kind of gone as planned. I got married, had children. My husband went through med school and we got, moved and everything seemed to be just falling into place as I planned. And then my dad got sick suddenly with a brain tumor, and he passed away within 8 months of after getting sick. And they lived in North Carolina at that time, so I traveled back and forth, helping my mom care for him. Because I'm also a nurse, I'm a registered nurse. So then that was 2019. Then that of June of 2019, that following April, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and we started treatments. And I was then taking care of her. She moved to Mississippi. And then that as I was away one day, in 2 hours away for her treatment, I got a call from my daughter. This was July of 2020. My daughter was 14 at the time. She's home with the younger three children. I have five kids. So the younger three children were home with her. She's a great babysitter. Nothing had ever gone wrong. But I got this call and she said, Mom, the house is on fire. And like my heart just dropped. And I
Mhm.
and I couldn't make sense of what she was saying. And I said, okay, well, who cooked something? Let me call our neighbor. So I hung up and I called our neighbor, and our neighbor went over with two fire extinguishers, thinking it was a small fire. And my neighbor called and said, Leah, the house is gone. It's just completely gone. So we lost everything in a house fire. in 2020. And so like I said, we had five kids. My oldest at the time was 16, and he began to spiral. Well, he was kind of starting to spiral right before the fire, but he st spiraled real bad after. And he's then was in and out of rehabs for drug addiction for 2 years. So we lived in a rental for 2 years. It took a long time to rebuild the house because of COVID. And during that time of dealing with my son in the house fire, I just realized that we don't always talk about those types of grief. We talk a lot about grief from like death, but we don't talk about these griefs that come from, big traumas or, a child that doesn't turn out the way we think, he should or she should, or, I've talked to so many people, even divorce. Divorce is a huge grief that we don't always recognize, or a job change, or, a loss of a friend. Um, any of those, any of those types of losses, um, deserve the same type of care and like heart and soul care than death. So that's what I learned during that time. So after that, I I thought I'd get a little break from loss.
Mhm.
My
Mhm.
son eventually he's actually doing really well right now. He did find his way after the several rehabs that he was in, and he just kept going back to drugs for that 2 years, but he is on the right path right now. But then my mom's cancer kept like progressing. The cancer progressed. She regressed, and she died this past November of bone. It went into her bone.
Mhm.
Um, and then my old one of my sons has a heart condition. So during that time, also that I write about in the book, he had to have surgery on his heart, which we knew was coming, but it ended up he had lots of complications and he was in the hospital for a month during that whole time of everything happening. So I've experienced lots of different losses, death. My mom's the one the death of my mom has been the hardest one, right
Mhm.
lately. So
You know,
yeah.
you raise a really good point, Leah, because we know that here on this earth, we're all going to pass away at some point. So
Yeah.
we know that something that we're going to have to deal with. Grief Share is an amazing Christian
Hmm. Hmm.
program for people who have
Yep.
lost a loved one.
Yep.
But like you said, we grieve over lots of different types of things. My husband lost his job a couple of years ago, and boy, was he grieving over that loss. We're
Mm-hmm.
very blessed that 8 months or so later, God did bring him to another job, but he was grieving during
Yeah.
that time. And, and our children. Okay, how many of you out there grieve over your children?
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
so many different things. So as you moved through that process, I know in the moment, did you just feel like you were grasping for air? What were you, with all the loss and things, what were you experiencing during those few years when you were just bombarded with loss
Yeah.
after loss?
I will say, I always remember that this pastor years ago when I was like in my late 20s said, the time that you're spending with the Lord today isn't necessarily for today, it's for the future. And that was definitely what got me through was my
Mhm.
foundation in Christ, because I had a strong foundation in Christ. I spent time with him daily, reading the word, studying it. So when you come into seasons where you're bombarded, you have that foundation. And you may not spend time in the Word every day in those hard seasons, but you know how to navigate it with God's presence. So I kept feeling and hearing from the Holy Spirit that God, this time of loss was an invitation to more of Him. And that's what
Mm,
I kept hearing, like, this is just a time for you to learn more about me, a different part of my character. I'm not saying that was ever always easy, but but I
Fair.
but it got that's those small little like nuggets from the Lord is what got me through those times. Like, okay, Lord, you're still here. Your presence is with me. I'm going to learn something new about you. And I just held on to that during the season.
I think that's beautiful. And as you were going through that, probably without your knowledge, he was providing material for this book that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did the same thing for me,
Yeah.
as I was going through a hard time.
So I'm not new. I wasn't new to writing.
Okay.
I was a writer and a speaker since 2016. I've had a blog and I was committed to the writing, like serving my readers in any way that I can. But
So
I
let
had,
me
go.
ask you,
Yeah.
what was your topic in 2016 and such? What type of writing were you doing at that point?
I encouraged women to rest in God through difficult times or
Wow.
chaotic times because I've had 5 kids. I've lived this full life and like God's rest isn't just for Sundays.
Mhm.
It's for every day. So that's just was, and I've spoke on Simply Be, like I had few conferences that I've spoken at or retreat centers. So anyway, yeah, that's what I wrote about before. So I didn't tackle the topic of grief during before that. But then as I walked through the season, God just like, you know how it goes, Doug, he just starts downloading all of these things to you. So,
How long after you went through this experience did you start writing the book?
okay. My book was released in 2024 in June.
Hmm.
So I signed a contract with my publisher in November of 2022, and then I started writing it probably after Christmas, and I wrote like all through that year of 2023.
Hmm.
And um that was when we had already moved back into the house. My son was settled, and I carved out time each day to write the book. It wasn't an easy, there were days that it's a heavy topic, and I had to relive a lot of the things I walked through. So it was like a very long process. I did have lots of writing in my journal during those few years. All the journals prior to the fire were lost in the fire, though. So I just have
Oh.
ones from when I wrote like during that season. So yeah.
So writing can be a really healing experience.
Hmm.
And what would you say to someone who also has gone through a lot of grief and loss? Writing is a good coping way to cope and work through it, but what other things would you recommend to the people listening that could help them if they're in that season?
Yeah. Name what you feel. A lot of times we walk through the day, um, not knowing like exactly what we're feeling.
Mhm.
So I teach my clients it's really helpful to stop and name what you feel. Like, okay, I feel angry right now, but why do I feel angry? Kind of digging into it. Sometimes you don't have the time to do that, so you just write a little note. You can write a little mental note, put a little note in your phone. Like, I felt angry at this time because this was happening, or I felt really sad. You know, if naming it really helps you move through it rather than it building up inside. Um, it's okay to take like doses of grief. Um, I wrote in my journal after the fire, like, we are sad, but we will not stay stuck. Because
Mhm.
I didn't want my kids to be defined by this fire. Like this, they had a fire. So they like, they couldn't move on in the world because of this traumatic thing, but I didn't want that to happen. So it was that we could be sad, but we weren't going to stay stuck in that. So we have moments of sadness, but we're going to keep moving on to what God has for us. And also, and then invite God into your grief. That's a huge thing. Like he's a big God. He can handle big emotions. It's clear in Psalms when David talked to him, like there were moments where I just poured out my heart to him and like even yelled at him
Mhm.
for all the things that were happening. And that's a release, and then God's presence can restore those places that are broken.
One of the things I really like about what you just shared, and let me kind of just recap, you said that it's okay to take doses of grief,
Mm-hmm.
identify your feelings,
Mm-hmm.
identify why you're feeling the way you are feeling, and state some kind of an action to help you move forward. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I really appreciate you saying identify why you're feeling the way you do, because sometimes we don't know why.
Mm-mm.
So to have someone intentionally consider that, I think is really a great step in that.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you have a fairly active life with five
I
children
do.
and
I
different
do.
hats.
It's wild sometimes. Yeah. It's wild.
So what do you think is, if you were to think back from when you were in the throes of everything and compared with where you are now in your life, how would you describe how God moved you from stuck in grief, although you weren't stuck because you said you weren't going to stay stuck,
Mhm.
you from that grief to what I hear as really a uh, joyful life with your family? You're all in good places. You have this business and you're writing, and things seem to be going really well for you. How did God manage that for you?
Oh gosh. I think it's just the small steps each day, really, honestly. The small, like, it started out after the house fire. It was just I made my bed every day.
Mm,
Um, because then I couldn't get back in it. I mean, I could, but I made it, put all the pillows on it. That started it's just the small things that we start doing in obedience to God. I made sure that I took walks, and at first it was all about the children. I put my whole ministry on hold for probably about a year, because I just needed to focus on getting the kids back on track. And then I just slowly started, the book, and then my mom passed away in November. So that was really difficult. And I stopped doing, like, I haven't been speaking as much. This is the first podcast I've done in a long time,
mm,
because they're draining sometimes.
mm,
But I mean, I think that the best thing for people is to not compare your story to anybody else's. You're you, and your ministry is or whatever you do to pour out to others is just what God has given you, and there's no timeline on that. And just being obedient to his word, and realizing that grief may change our story, but it doesn't ever have the last say. Grief does not have the last say. God does. Um, and just allowing God to use your story in like whatever way he wants to. Um, so I had to stop that comparison, because you can do that. You're like, okay, I've only written one book, but I have friends that are on their second book that we started writing the first book
mm,
together. Well,
mm.
that's not my story, like, and there are lots of people that are maybe in the world sense, way ahead of me in this writing world, but that's not my story.
Leah, that's that's just beautiful advice because it's like anything in life. You're not going to go from grief to immediately the next day wake up and say, "Okay, I'm over it."
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
journey. And I think the importance of being consistent in your walk with the Lord
Mhm.
and focusing on being obedient to Him is a huge lesson because we get so drawn in.
Right.
Sometimes we forget just, like you said, make your bed. If you're tempted to
Yeah.
go back in it, just make it. Take
Yeah.
those steps. I have one more question,
Sure.
and I just would like to know if there is any Bible verse or passage that God has used through this experience that has been meaningful to you and encouraging to you through this journey of grief.
Well, Psalm 23 has always been a huge encouraging Bible section, like
Hmm.
psalm for me, because it says, I will walk through the valley. Um, we have to walk through those valleys sometimes, and we have to keep walking. It doesn't say like we stayed in the valley or we sat down and camped out in it. It says we walked through it. And yeah, that's what I would really encourage people just to realize that there are seasons that we have to walk through the valley, but that doesn't define you or your story or God defines it.
So why don't you tell us more about your book and your ministry and your coaching and those kinds of things? We may have some people listening that might want to take advantage of, your services because it's coming out of a place of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my book is Freedom to Feel, Finding God in the Midst of Grief and Trauma. And it's you can find it on Amazon or Amazon's probably the best place. We find all of our books there. My website is just leaturner.com. It's just LEA Turner.com. You can find all my resources there on my website. I am a grief coach. Um, I'm mostly take people through a 12-week process.
Mhm.
We have an actual workbook that we work through, and I've seen women really like really come out of dark places working through that program, and it's really cool to see God work. And then I am also the co-founder of Writer to Writer, which helps writing clients in book launches, but also in the writing process. My partner Kim and I help lots of women do that, so we love that. I'm on Instagram at Lea J Turner, and then you'll find me on Facebook too. So
Great. Well, I'm going to have links to all of
yeah,
the
yeah,
media and your
yeah,
website in the show notes. Read the show notes,
yes, yes,
please.
yeah.
Is there anything else you would like to share with the people listening today? Any final words of advice? And you've had great suggestions today. Thank you.
I would say just don't do grief alone.
Mm, oh, yes.
You find people. I had a woman I didn't even I had a woman reach out to me through my website. Didn't know her, didn't she just found me, and she didn't have anyone to walk through grief with, and
Oh,
she knew that, so she sought out, and I'm not saying people have to seek me out. I'm just saying like seek it out. Sometimes you have to seek out people that can walk it through you with you because not everybody is equipped to do that.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, don't do it alone. That's where the enemy really can come in.
It's like our whole Christian walk. We do
Yeah,
not walk alone.
yeah.
So excellent. Well, Leah, I really appreciate your time today. Like I said, I know you're busy and have lots of hats you wear.
Yeah, this was fun. I was glad to be able to do it. I haven't
Yeah,
done it in a while, so I enjoyed it.
thank you. Well, I know that our listeners are really going to appreciate your authenticity and your humility
Thank you.
and your suggestions. So I hope God blesses you and continues to bless you and heal you. loss and grief is one of those things that even when you feel like you are in a better place, sometimes it comes back.
Yeah, it sneaks up. Yep. Yep.
So may God bless you.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe and leave your comments, questions, and even suggestions. I would love to hear from you. Join the conversation on mental health and faith. Have a blessed day.